going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, the latest physique update from Nick Walker with his new coach in the photo, Kyle Wilkes. As you guys know, he's no longer going to be working with Matt Jansen, and Matt Jansen's no longer going to be coaching anybody. Nick, of course, looking gargantuan in this photo, a most muscular shot with the caption, "Never left." Now, what I do know is we're going to find out for sure on Friday who's competing in the Arnold Classic and who's not. I still kind of have a feeling we might see Nick do that show. This physique update is just one of many that we've gotten recently, and typically Nick starts posting more updates when he's in prep for a show, obviously, because he's looking better when he's in prep for a show. Straight up off-season shirtless physique updates are definitely not as common, so I kind of wonder if we might see him on that list come Friday. And I've said before that I would like to see Nick do a bigger show like the Arnold, beat some bigger name guys, stand with some of the bigger name guys, and it doesn't get much bigger than Samson Dauda, who's doing the Arnold. We already know that Andrew Jack is also doing it. And again, just from the prize money perspective, it's still a six-figure payday if Nick Walker were just to get second place. And I'm sure that money would help out a lot with him having missed 2 Olympias in a row, which, like I said, I'm sure he's got plenty of great sponsorship deals. He makes plenty of money. That's a lot of money for a bodybuilder that hasn't done the Olympia in 2 years. The Olympia is like the big payday for these top guys. And I would imagine that Nick's sponsors probably want to see him compete in a bigger show too, because that means more eyeballs on their brand as well, the bigger the show that Nick does. So I definitely wouldn't be surprised if we saw Nick's name on that upcoming Arnold Classic competitor list on Friday. But let's go ahead and look at the upcoming season, because it starts with the Arnold and then it immediately kicks back up into gear with several shows right off the bat. So even if Nick is not prepping for the Arnold, he could be prepping for a number of these shows that are coming immediately afterwards. So a few weeks after the Arnold, at the end of March, you've got the Detroit Pro. We already know some big names are doing that. You've got the Arnold South America, early April. You've got the Pittsburgh Pro, early May. New York Pro, mid-May. Cali Pro, late May. Toronto Pro, June. And one of the things I was thinking about, I don't know if and when they're doing another Arnold Classic UK in 2025. Last year, it was right around the same time as the Arnold Classic Ohio, just a few weeks in between the two. This year, I don't see it on the schedule, and if you go to their website, I don't see an updated date for 2025. They still have the 2024 dates on there. So I don't know if we're going to see an Arnold Classic UK happen, but we are going to see the Arnold Classic Brazil shortly after the Arnold Ohio. So there is that. I don't know about the UK yet. But it is kind of looking like potentially there might not be one, unless it's way later in the year. And if you zoom out and look at the full schedule that goes all the way to the end of the year, at least to the latest updated date, to be fair, the Olympia is not on there yet. They haven't announced the Olympia date, so maybe they announce the Arnold Classic UK dates at a later time. But it certainly looks like this year we're not going to have the back-to-back US and UK Arnolds that we had last year, which I thought was kind of exciting to see. You basically got an Arnold Classic Ohio rematch a couple weeks later. Now, next up in the news, I wanted to talk about Samson Dauda. There's been a couple new physique updates of Samson, kind of standing in the gym, a front relax. There was 2 variations of it, one where he's pulling a vacuum and one where he's not. And a lot of people were talking about how crazy Samson looks in these pictures because of the sheer size that Samson has, but how crazy small his waist is. Just an absolutely insane V-taper for a bodybuilder of his size, especially in the vacuum pose variation. He looks like a classic physique, not like a classic physique competitor today, but he looks like a Lee Haney type of physique, but much, much more muscular. And I've kind of touched on this idea before that Samson winning the Olympia this year could be a changing of the standards for men's open bodybuilding, of what they want from an open guy. And I was thinking a good way to think about this, I know that it was kind of controversial to like Hadi Chupin fans, for example, because Hadi was more conditioned than Samson. It was controversial to them that Hadi didn't win and Samson did. And I think with the Olympia judging, a lot of times the better question, instead of asking, was this the right decision, having this guy win, the better question is usually, why did the judges pick this guy to win? And I think it could be that they're setting the tone for a different set of standards that they're looking for. They want a more aesthetic open guy that still has a lot of size, and maybe conditioning is not as crucial as it was in the past. I mean, we've heard even Steve Weinberger, the head judge, he's talked about how he thinks conditioning is overemphasized these days and shouldn't be prioritized over everything else. So you could look at Samson winning the Olympia this year as sending a message and setting a new tone for open bodybuilding. Because one of the things that I thought about was, like, if you look back to when Sean Roden defeated Phil Heath, I wouldn't say that was a controversial decision so much as a surprising decision. And I wouldn't say that Samson winning either was controversial, just maybe surprising. But if you look back to Sean and Phil, if you ask that same question back then, why did the judges pick Sean over Phil? I think a lot of it came down to Phil's midsection. Around that time, that was a big topic of conversation, and having Phil lose and ending Phil's reign, that was sending a message that we're not going to tolerate midsections that look like this anymore. And it was shortly after that decision that they put that in the IFBB rules for open bodybuilding, that you'll lose points if you have a distended midsection. That's written in the IFBB rulebook right now. And it came about right around that time, the end of the Phil Heath era. So the question of why did Sean Roden win? Well, he was the better bodybuilder that day, but also I think they were sending that message with the midsection thing. And it might not have seemed that important in the moment that Sean was kind of changing the tone of open bodybuilding, but if you look back, that really is kind of where open bodybuilding changed a little bit, because you had Sean win, you had Brandon Curry win, two very aesthetic guys. You did have Rami come in there and win a couple, and he is a mass monster, but he never really had a midsection problem. But you look at Derek Lunsford, you look at Hadi Chupin, and now Samson Dauda. You look at the fact that all top three open guys at the Olympia can pull a vacuum pose and have a great V-taper. Maybe you could look at Samson winning this year as being another one of those moments that's kind of setting the tone going forward. Yeah, maybe he wasn't the most conditioned guy, but maybe this is the judges saying that's not as important as being a big, aesthetic, pleasing to look at, and also a little bit freaky physique. I think there's certainly a greater emphasis in modern bodybuilding right now on aesthetics at the Olympia than there ever has been. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to the popularity of classic physique, but it seems like it's bleeding into open bodybuilding. So maybe what we're seeing right now with Derek winning last year, also, and you know, Derek is a very aesthetic guy himself, one of the craziest V-tapers we've seen in a long time. But maybe this is another one of those turning of the tides and really pivoting open into a more aesthetically pleasing direction. And Samson does really have both. He's a bit of a mass monster and very aesthetic. So I've been kind of looking at it and thinking, could this be another one of those moments like when Sean beat Phil? Could Samson be the next guy to go on a serious reign at the Olympia and win multiple titles? I've said this before, but I don't think it was controversial that Samson won. Like I said, I think it was surprising. So I think the better question is not did the judges make the right decision, but why did they make that decision? And maybe that's because the standards are changing a little bit, and Samson is more of what that standard is that they're looking for, even if he's not the most conditioned guy on stage. And just like Samson's former coach Milos used to say all the time, Samson is bodybuilding. He is what you want from a bodybuilder. He's got it all. The structure, the size, the shape, the aesthetics, the flow to his physique. Samson's got it all, even if he's not the most conditioned guy. And I think the judges were sending a message with him winning that this is what we're looking for. And I guess, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Do you like that or not? Is for the fans to decide. But that's kind of how I'm looking at the Samson victory. Is, yeah, Hadi was the most conditioned guy on stage, but maybe the judges picked Samson because that's not what they're looking for anymore. Because if you look back, you know, talking about the Arnold Classic coming up, if you look back at the UK and the US Arnolds, I thought those battles were pretty comparable, especially the UK Arnold where Samson looked better. But him and Hadi, it was kind of the same dynamic there, but Hadi beat him at both of those shows. But this time, he didn't. And I thought Samson's UK Arnold package was pretty close to his Olympia package. I was kind of surprised by that. But maybe there's a reason for that decision. The standards for open have certainly changed throughout the history of bodybuilding, and this could be one of those moments. And if you look back, even beyond the Sean Roden and Phil Heath era, when Dorian started winning, a lot of people say that was the dawn of the era of the mass monsters. When Dorian started winning, that's when the guys started coming in crazy big. And you started seeing a lot more guys that were 250 plus on stage, 300 plus in the off season. Even still back then, 300 plus was rare in the off season, but still, that was kind of another era where things changed. And you look back at when Rich Gaspari hit the scene. People say that's when striated glutes became something that the judges have focused on. So it's not that the standard of judging has stayed the same throughout the history of bodybuilding. It's definitely changed. And are we in an era right now where it could be changing again to something that's more like what Samson is? Because that's the interesting thing about bodybuilding, and what makes it so easy to talk about is because it's so subjective. There's so many different opinions that you could have on anything about bodybuilding, because even the judging itself is subjective and changes over time. It's not really like a set-in-stone thing. It seems to fluctuate a bit. So when I look at Samson, especially Samson in updates like these, I see a guy that could be one of those guys that's a standard-changing type of bodybuilder. Now, next up in the news, just minutes ago, actually, Hadi Chupin posted another posing physique update. And I'm kind of curious about this, because this is like the fourth day in a row that Hadi has posted a full posing physique update. And of course, the other day we talked about Hadi and his kind of disappointment or disagreement with the judging at the Olympia not being so focused on conditioning. But I'm kind of wondering now, even though Hadi had said previously he's not doing the Arnold, I'm kind of wondering now if there's a chance that he is. Or if he's competing in something, in one of those shows that we mentioned earlier that's towards the beginning of the year. And again, Hadi doesn't have to. He's a former Olympia champion, so he does not need to requalify for the Olympia. So there's no reason for him to compete in between now and the next Olympia. But he's posted a lot of physique updates lately, more than he typically does. And he typically very rarely posts a physique update unless he's prepping or about to compete. And I guess we don't know for sure that these are recent, but like I said, this is the fourth day in a row he's posted a full posing trunks physique update. And of course it's Hadi, so it's not surprising that he's in really good shape in these updates. But I'm kind of wondering what we're going to see on that competitor list come Friday. Could Hadi's name be on there? Because he's been posting a lot. And I don't think he even captioned this post from a couple minutes ago. And we still don't know who his new coach is going to be. I don't know. It's kind of interesting, though, all these physique updates. Maybe we are going to see Hadi on stage sooner than we thought, sooner than the Olympia. He looks like he's still in pretty crazy shape, that's for sure, if these are in fact recent. And I do genuinely believe that Hadi would be the only name that they could add to that Arnold Classic competitor list that I would really believe has a shot at beating Samson. Because you never know, maybe I'm totally wrong about Samson being kind of a standard-changing bodybuilder, and maybe Hadi comes into the Arnold peeled and beats Samson there right after the Olympia. Who knows? And again, that's kind of the super entertaining thing about bodybuilding, is really anything can happen because it's so subjective. And then again, I don't know. If you look at Andrew Jacked, I would say his physique is probably the closest to a Samson type of physique. So if Samson was the new standard, I would have thought that Andrew Jacked would have placed higher at the Olympia, higher than 5th. He's tall, he's big, he's like 300 pounds on stage. Not the most conditioned guy, but he's got a beautiful physique, ton of size, very similar to Samson in a lot of those regards. And then all the guys that placed in between Samson and Andrew were shorter guys, but I guess all of them were aesthetic in their own right, even if they were a little bit boxier because they're short. You look at Martin, for example. He posted a posing video yesterday. And even Martin's, even the top 4, all of them can pull a vacuum pose, including Martin. And I don't think a vacuum pose is like the only indicator of a guy being aesthetic, by the way. I think that Andrew Jacked actually looks a lot better flexing his abs in a pose like the front double bicep instead of hitting a vacuum pose. It looks better crunching his abs for him. And again, if you think back to that Phil Heath era, around 2017 where there's all this talk about the midsection. Think of how many open bodybuilders were hitting a vacuum pose. Almost none. And now you've got the whole top four at the Olympia pretty much every year hitting it. Things have changed a lot in open bodybuilding at the Olympia since Phil lost, and that's what I mean about that being kind of a pivotal moment where the criteria did change and literally changed and added a rule about the midsections. If you go back to 2017, I bet you would have never imagined that in a few years you'd have the whole top four at the Olympia all hitting vacuum poses, all having crazy small waists and great V-tapers. And I also feel like this era that we're in right now has been kind of an era of turmoil, of trying to find who the next guy is. And that's why I lean towards Samson, is because he has those crazy characteristics of being really big, a ton of muscle, but a beautiful physique, small waist, aesthetic, all that stuff. He is like the whole package, just minus crazy peeled conditioning. I'm not saying that Samson wasn't in shape at the Olympia. He certainly was, but he just wasn't on Hadi's level. So I'm simply saying that the judges could be saying, we don't need Hadi's level to win a show or to win the Olympia. We'd prefer Samson's level of size and aesthetics versus Hadi's level conditioning. Whereas in the past, the judging has shown they've preferred Hadi's conditioning. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you think Samson could be the next guy that wins for years and years and years because he is the new standard that's just so different from everybody else? Or do you think we're going to continue this kind of pattern that we've had of there being no consistent champion? And do you think next year somebody different is going to win the Olympia? But that's going to wrap it up for the video, guys. Let me know in the comments below, who do you think is going to be on that Arnold Classic list on Friday that's going to surprise us? Who is there going to be a big name? Is there going to be somebody that could be a potential threat to Samson? Could it be Nick? What about Hadi or Derek? Are there any names that they could add to that list that would get you really excited that you think would present like a legitimate challenge for Samson? Or do you think without Hadi doing the show, Samson's kind of going to walk away with it? But it is bodybuilding, so you can never really say that someone's just going to walk away with it because anything could happen. But I do think Samson, without Hadi or Derek, I think it's going to be tough to beat. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys, appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at NickStrengthPower, my Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power, my secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.